Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital Today channel. Drew and Tracy are stuck as a result of the find. As Drew and Marty try to persuade Ronnie to hand over ownership of Monica's house to the despised Cain, the Quartermaine living room is filled with tension. Outback steals the papers when she gets up to think for herself, but it looks like someone gets them back. Drew returns the pen to Ronnie as the family gathers around. He tells her that if she signs, she will end her relationship with them all permanently, but nobody knows what's really in store. In the boxes at Lulu's house, Tracy has discovered Monica's real will. She rushes to the estate in a race against time to reveal to everyone who owns Monica's house. Sonny can still hear Nina's whispered words as she threw her friend under that big old bus. He takes his newfound knowledge to Alexis and tells her that he knows of another person with a motive to shoot Drew. This implies that Alexis can cast doubt on Portia rather than Michael during Willow's trial. Considering that Alexis knows she and Curtis are each other's coordinated alibis for this crime, will Alexis want to throw Portia into the middle of things? To begin, in an effort to save her ungrateful daughter, Nina scolded Portia. Now, the husband of Portia is telling his ex-wife that he only wants her. Naturally, Portia has already lied. Jordan has been waiting for these words, and she believes that everyone is saying them in all honesty. Curtis knows that Portia is pregnant, and he is still choosing her. Curtis is unaware that he might or might not be the father of Portia's child. For now, none of that matters to Curtis and Jordan. It would be even simpler for them if Curtis is not the father. Will they end up sleeping through the night? The Quartermaine mansion was rarely quiet, but this particular evening carried a suffocating kind of tension that clung to every surface, every portrait, every flicker of candlelight. The family had gathered for what was supposed to be a simple signing. Ronnie, cornered and confused, was being pressured by Cain and Martin Gray to sign over ownership of Monica's house. It was Drew's move to secure the final piece of his long-sought revenge against the Quartermaines. Ronnie, though clearly uneasy, tried to keep her composure as the walls seemed to close in around her. When she rose to steady herself, the notorious schemer known as Outback slipped away with the papers. For a brief moment, chaos erupted, accusations, shouting, footsteps, but somehow, the papers made their way back into Drew's hands. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone in the room. No matter how far anyone ran, the Quartermaine legacy always found its way back home. Drew, calm on the outside but burning with determination within, handed the pen back to Ronnie. "If you sign this," he said with a hollow voice, "you're free of us. Free of all of this." His tone was cold, yet there was a trace of something else, resentment, perhaps, or guilt. Ronnie's hand trembled as she stared down at the document, her reflection faintly visible in the polished table's surface. No one in the room truly knew what would happen once she signed, or who would emerge victorious in the war over Monica's estate. But across town, someone else was racing against time to ensure that the truth would finally come out. Tracy Quartermaine, ever the family matriarch and master manipulator, had made a discovery that could turn the entire situation upside down. While searching through old boxes at Lulu's house, she had stumbled upon Monica's real will, the one that no one was supposed to find. Dusty, yellowed, but unmistakably authentic, the document bore Monica's original signature and seal. What Tracy read inside made her heart stop. Jason Morgan, not Cain, was the true heir to Monica's estate. Every piece of property, every asset, every share of ELQ, everything was meant to go to Jason. Drew, who had spent months positioning himself as the rightful heir and victim of family betrayal, had no legal claim to anything. As the realization sank in, Tracy felt the old thrill of the chase. She had been through countless Quartermaine battles over money and legacy, but this one had personal stakes. Jason's claim would not only upend Drew's carefully built empire, it would expose the deceit that had poisoned the family from within. Tracy grabbed her coat, clutching the wool tightly, and rushed toward the mansion. Each minute that passed meant Drew could solidify his control, sign the transfer, and make the truth much harder to reverse. She couldn't let that happen. Meanwhile, in the mansion, the tension was mounting. Ronnie hesitated with the pen in hand. Marty leaned over her shoulder, whispering encouragements disguised as threats. Drew's eyes were fixed on her, unblinking. But then a loud knock shattered the silence. Tracy burst into the room, breathless, eyes blazing with righteous fury. "Stop this nonsense right now," she shouted, waving the document like a sword. Everyone turned, stunned by her sudden appearance. Drew's confident mask cracked for the first time. "What are you doing here, Tracy?" he demanded. "I'm here to stop a fraud," she spat back. "Because Monica's real will doesn't leave this house to you, or Ronnie, or anyone else in this room. It belongs to Jason. He's the rightful heir." The words landed like a thunderclap. Drew's knuckles whitened around the edge of the table. Ronnie dropped the pen. Marty's smirk evaporated. In an instant, the entire dynamic of the room changed. Drew's power, so carefully built through manipulation and intimidation, began to crumble. The others exchanged uncertain looks. If Tracy was telling the truth, then everything Drew had claimed was built on lies. But the war was far from over. Drew, desperate to maintain control, accused Tracy of forging the will. He called her senile, said she was clinging to the past. Yet when Jason himself walked into the room moments later, summoned by a cryptic call from Michael, the tide fully turned. The family's black sheep, the silent enforcer, the man who had always stood apart from the family's corporate squabbles, was now standing in the center of the storm as the legal heir. Jason's quiet presence commanded attention, his calm a stark contrast to Drew's growing rage. Tracy handed him the document. "It's all yours, Jason. Monica wanted you to have everything. She never changed her mind." Jason looked at the paper for a long moment, his expression unreadable. He never wanted to inherit the Quartermaine fortune. But Monica had trusted him, and that meant something. "If this is true," he said softly, "then Drew's been lying to everyone, including himself." Outside the mansion's walls, another battle was unfolding. Nina Reeves's whispered words to Sonny Corinthos had set a dangerous chain of events in motion. She had thrown her friend Portia under the proverbial bus, claiming that Portia had the most motive to shoot Drew. Sonny, always one to follow the trail of secrets, took this information straight to Alexis Davis. He believed that during Willow's trial, Alexis could redirect suspicion away from Michael and onto Portia. But Alexis knew better than anyone that this was a double-edged sword. Alexis and Curtis had provided alibis for each other in this tangled web of lies. If she implicated Portia, she risked unraveling the fragile truce that kept everyone out of prison. Yet, part of her wanted to expose Portia, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Portia's secrets were piling up, and her marriage to Curtis was hanging by a thread. Nina's betrayal had forced everyone's hand. Portia, meanwhile, was trapped in her own personal hell. Her husband Curtis, unaware of the full truth, had told his ex-wife Jordan that he still wanted her. "You and only you," he'd said, believing it was the right thing, believing that he was being honest. But the universe of Port Charles never rewarded honesty, it punished it. Curtis had no idea that Portia was pregnant, and even worse, that he might not be the father. The secret gnawed at her as she tried to hold her life together, while Nina's scheming threatened to destroy what little stability she had left. Jordan, who had been waiting years for Curtis to say those words, found herself caught between gratitude and guilt. She believed Curtis was speaking from the heart, unaware that the ground beneath them was ready to collapse. If the child wasn't Curtis's, it could free him from Portia for good, and leave Jordan with the man she had always loved. But deep down, Jordan knew that nothing in Port Charles ever stayed buried for long. Back at the Quartermaine mansion, the fallout from Tracy's revelation was swift and brutal. Drew lashed out, accusing everyone of betrayal. "You all wanted this. You wanted to see me lose everything," he shouted, veins bulging, voice cracking. Jason, ever stoic, refused to rise to the bait. "It's not about winning, Drew. It's about the truth." Those words, calm yet final, cut deeper than any accusation. For Drew, the walls were closing in. His deal with Ronnie was now meaningless, his claim to the house void, and his power at ELQ slipping through his fingers. Even his allies were beginning to turn away. Ronnie, shaken and humiliated, realized she'd been a pawn in a much larger game. Marty, ever the opportunist, began quietly distancing himself. As night fell, Tracy poured herself a glass of sherry and looked out over the estate grounds. Monica would be proud, she murmured, though there was a trace of sadness in her voice. She had won, for now, but every Quartermaine victory came with a price. Jason stood beside her, the weight of the inheritance heavy on his shoulders. "You didn't do this for me," he said, "you did it for her." Tracy smiled faintly. "You always were too perceptive for your own good." The camera of fate panned outward from the mansion, capturing the flickering lights of a family forever caught between love, greed, and redemption. Drew's downfall was only the beginning. As the Quartermaines braced for the next storm, alliances would shift, secrets would explode, and the battle for power, and for truth, would only grow darker. Jason's return to the Quartermaine mansion didn't just signal a change in ownership, it signaled the beginning of another Quartermaine war. The family had fought over money, companies, and property before, but this battle was different. This was personal. Drew had spent years trying to reclaim the family he believed had abandoned him. Jason, on the other hand, had spent years running from that same family, avoiding the mansion like it was cursed. Now, the mansion belonged to him, a man who never wanted it, and never asked for it. In the following days, the tension at the Quartermaine estate became unbearable. Staff whispered about the late-night arguments, the shouting behind closed doors, the sound of glass breaking. Drew refused to move out, claiming that Tracy's discovery was conveniently timed and likely forged. He had his lawyer file an injunction to prevent Jason from taking ownership until a court could verify the authenticity of Monica's will. But Tracy, ever the strategist, had already called in her own experts, one of whom verified the document's legitimacy beyond any doubt. When the legal team confirmed that Monica's signature was authentic, Drew's face turned pale. For a man who prided himself on control, he suddenly looked like he'd lost everything. Jason didn't gloat, that wasn't his way. But his quiet confidence only made things worse for Drew. To Drew, Jason's calm demeanor felt like mockery, as if his twin brother was silently telling him that he was never meant to fit in here. At breakfast one morning, Tracy watched both men from across the table. "You know," she said with her trademark Quartermaine bite, "Monica always believed the two of you could coexist. She thought you'd balance each other out. One heart, one mind, two sons. But I think she overestimated you both." Drew slammed his coffee cup down. "You think this is funny?" Tracy's eyes narrowed. "No, dear. I think it's tragic. You could have been part of this family if you'd stopped trying to control it." Jason said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence between the two brothers spoke volumes. Later that afternoon, as the house emptied out, Jason wandered into Monica's study. It smelled the same, a mix of old paper, lemon polish, and faint perfume. He sat down in her chair, staring at the family photos on the wall, Alan, Edward, Lila, and Monica herself. They all looked proud, unbroken, eternal. He remembered the last conversation he'd had with his mother before she died, how she had begged him to come home, to take care of the family, to make peace with Drew. He hadn't listened then. And now it was too late. Outside, Drew stood by the gate, talking to Carly on the phone. She was trying to calm him down, but her words barely registered. "You can fight this," she told him. "Jason doesn't even want that house. He's not going to keep it." "You don't understand," Drew said, his voice tight. "This isn't about a house. This is about everything I've lost, everything I built being ripped away because of a name on a piece of paper." Carly sighed. "Then make peace with him before you lose more than just property." But Drew couldn't. The bitterness was too deep, the betrayal too fresh. Meanwhile, Sonny Corinthos had his own problems. Nina's latest confession had thrown his world into chaos yet again. After learning that she'd told him about Portia's supposed motive to shoot Drew, Sonny began to doubt everything she'd said. His loyalty to his family had always been complicated, but this time, the stakes were higher. If Portia was innocent, and Nina had lied, the fallout could destroy not just marriages but entire alliances across Port Charles. Sonny went straight to Alexis, who was already knee-deep in preparation for Willow's trial. "You can't use that," he said the moment he walked into her office. Alexis looked up, confused. "Use what?" "What Nina told me. About Portia." He closed the door behind him. "I don't trust where that information came from, and you shouldn't either." Alexis set down her pen, studying him carefully. "Sonny, if Portia had motive and opportunity, it could redirect suspicion. It could help Michael." Sonny shook his head. "No. It's a trap. Nina's playing her own game. If we use that, it'll blow up in all our faces." Alexis frowned. "So what do you suggest? Sit on it while the prosecution paints Michael as the villain?" Sonny's voice softened, but his tone stayed firm. "We find the truth. No more lies. No more manipulation." For once, Alexis believed him. But truth in Port Charles was never simple. At the same time, Portia was unraveling. Nina's betrayal had spread through the rumor mill like wildfire. Everywhere she went, she could feel the judgmental stares, the whispers behind her back. Curtis had been distant, cold, even, since learning about her pregnancy. She hadn't told him the full truth, only that she wasn't sure who the father was. But Curtis wasn't stupid. He could do the math. Jordan, meanwhile, was caught in a moral tug-of-war. She wanted to believe that Curtis's renewed affection meant something real. She wanted to believe they could rebuild what they'd lost. But a part of her knew it was built on shaky ground, on secrets, lies, and wishful thinking. That night, when Curtis showed up at her apartment unannounced, Jordan didn't know what to expect. "Curtis," she said quietly, opening the door. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he replied, his voice low. "But I needed to see you." She hesitated, then stepped aside. The air between them was heavy with unspoken words. "Jordan," he began, "I can't keep living like this. Portia's keeping things from me, I can feel it. Every time I look at her, it's like she's hiding something." Jordan folded her arms. "And what about you? Are you hiding something too?" Curtis met her gaze. "I told you, I want you. That hasn't changed." Jordan took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. "But if that baby isn't yours, then what? You think you can just come back to me and start over?" Curtis looked away, conflicted. "I don't know. Maybe I just want something that feels real again." Before either of them could say more, the silence between them broke, not with words, but with emotion. Curtis reached for her, and Jordan didn't resist. For one brief, reckless moment, they gave in to the history, the longing, the pain. But even as they kissed, both knew it couldn't last. In Port Charles, love was never without consequence. Back at the Quartermaine mansion, Jason was trying to make sense of everything. The inheritance, the family, the endless drama, it all felt hollow. But when he looked through Monica's papers, he found something else. A letter, addressed to him, written in her familiar cursive. "My dearest Jason. If you're reading this, it means you've finally come home. I want you to know that I never doubted your heart. You've always done what you thought was right, even when it hurt you. This house, this family, they've always been yours, even when you tried to walk away. Take care of them, Jason. Take care of Drew. He's lost more than you know." Jason sat quietly for a long time, the letter trembling in his hands. Monica's words hit him harder than any inheritance ever could. Later that night, he found Drew sitting alone in the den, a bottle of whiskey between them. The brothers hadn't spoken since the legal confirmation. Drew looked defeated, but not broken. Jason poured himself a glass and sat down. "You're not going to win this in court," he said quietly. Drew gave a bitter laugh. "You here to rub it in?" "No," Jason replied. "I'm here because this isn't what Mom wanted. She didn't want us fighting." Drew's jaw tightened. "You think this is about her?" "It's always been about her," Jason said. "About trying to live up to what she wanted for us. You wanted her love. I wanted her peace." Neither of us ever got it. Drew stared into his drink, silent for a moment. You got everything, Jason. The family, the loyalty, the legacy. I had to fight for scraps. Jason shook his head. You think this house means anything to me? It's a symbol, that's all. You want it? Keep it. Drew looked up, stunned. What are you talking about? I'll transfer it back to you. I'll keep what Mom left in her will, but the house, it's yours. I don't belong here. I never did. The words left Drew speechless. For the first time, he saw Jason not as a rival, but as a brother. Why? He finally asked. Jason stood, finishing his drink. Because Monica was right. You've lost enough. The next morning, Tracy nearly fainted when she learned what Jason had done. You gave it back to